Today we are going to present Thai Manufacturing BHT case which is about purchase process. Overall this case explains about the role and duties played by employees in purchase process. The first requirement about which process involved in this case. Obviously, we can identify the purchase process involved in this case because Thai manufacturing purchase merchandise from other manufacturers. And purchase process is a key component in inventory management. It is because by monitoring existing stocks, a company can determine what to buy and how much to buy and when to buy the goods. And the second requirement is source of documents involved. Basically, there are 8 documents involved in this case, which are purchase requisition, purchase order, vendor invoice, receiving report, account payable subsidiary ledger, checks, credit note, and vendor statement. Uh, first, First is a purchasing requisition. In this case, we can see the purchasing requisition prepared by stockkeeper storekeeper. They when After the storekeeper prepare the requisition form, they send to a purchase department, and then only the department, based on information in requisition form, they will order the goods. And purchase requisition form is used when an employee has to make a purchase or order request on behalf of their company. Second is a purchase order. In this case, purchase order produced by purchase department at Thai Manufacturing PhD, checked by the purchasing manager, and then they sent to vendor. This is a document that includes description, price, quantity, and the details of products and services being bought, and other details. Third is a vendor invoice. Vendor invoice document includes the description and quantity of the shipped of goods and services provided, and the price including freight, and terms of trading include cash discounts and date charge. In this case, vendor invoice is received directly by the account payable department in Thai Food Manufacturing BHD. Okay, then receipt report. Receipt report, this document used to report the amount and type of finished goods and raw material after receipt of shipment. Uh, the evidence receiving report involved in this case is at Thai for manufacturing BHD. They provide duplicate copy of each receiving reports, and they store in receiving department. And then accounts payable subsidiary ledger document. This account ledger showing the history of transaction and the amounts owed to each supplier and seller. And then checks. Checks is usually informs about the check number, pays name, and amount paid. In this case, the account payable department also prepare the monthly summary of check issued, which is then used for updating the account payable ledger accounts. And and then credit note. Credit note is known as a credit memo. Thai Food Manufacturing, in this case, when accounts payable department receive a credit note directly from the vendor, the account payable department ledger and purchase journal are updated. Then a credit note also filled by the vendor name in alphabetical order. The last document is a vendor statement. The statement is from the vendor represent the buying activity recorded on the vendor's records. In Thai Food Manufacturing BHT, by matching the vendor accounts with the account payable record, it helped to check consistency of its documents. Okay, that's all from me, and thank you. Nadia will continue explaining about this case.
I will explain about the journal entry. The first one is cash purchase. when typhoid manufacturing Berhad involved in cash purchase, it debit the purchase and credit the cash. The second one is credit purchase. It is the same as cash purchase, but they are using a payable, so it will debit purchase and credit payable. When the payable is being paid, it will debit the payable and credit the cash. The third journal entries is when typhoid manufacturing Berhad purchase accounts are returned to vendor. It happened because it have a duplicate record. So it will debit account payable and credit purchase returns and allowance. This is the flow chart of purchase cycle. There is 8 of it. So the first one is send purchase requisition form, and then second one is create purchase order and send out request for quotation or RFQ. And the fourth one is analyze and select a vendor, receive and check invoice, and then receive the goods, and then authorize invoice and pay the vendor, and then record keeping. After all of this, it is done. There are four internal code involved. The first one is control environment, which it is involved the roles of governance and management, including the attitudes, knowledge, including actions of those responsibility for governance and management about the internal regulation of the organization and its role in the organization. For example, Thai manufacturing Berhad tops management should encourage their employer to be honest, integrity, and bring together teamwork for the sake of the company growth. The second one is risk assessment, which it involves a dynamic and interactive process for identifying and analyzing risk in order to achieve the goals of the entity and forms a basis for determining how to manage risk. For example, Thai Fight Manufacturing Berhad have been using manual system for record the purchase transaction. It's not systematic. It's not good because the entity have over 100 transactions, but it's using manual. It is advisable for Thai manufacturing Berhad to use the computerized system to avoid the misstatement of the records. The third one is control activities. That is a control practice are the process and procedure that help facilitate the executions and application of management guidelines to resolve the threats found in the risk assessment process. The processing department should be kept separate from other departments. It is not only to reduce the risk of illegal purchase, but typical less costly purchasing in bulk as well. The fourth one is monitoring control. Monitoring control is a mechanism that measures the reliability of the success of internal regulation over time. This requires prompt assessment of efficacy of control and taking appropriate remedial measures. For example, the auditor and both the checks and payable subsidiary ledger are subject for review. From me, thank you. Let's move to the next point.
So for inherent risk, the relevant inherent risk factors that may impact the transaction process and the financial statement account. So for the example, for the typhoid manufacturing Berhad, using the manual way to record the transaction, this is bound to make a mistake. For it is advisable for that company to change their system from manual to computer-based. This is because it will be easier to detect any minor mistakes. And also, next is control risk. Control risk, typhoid manufacturing Berhad may have formal procedure for authorized, such as the storekeeper need to sign the requisition before forward to purchasing department. However, tests of controls would then be necessary to verify that this control is being operating effectively. The auditor need to examine a sample of purchase transaction. Okay, next the important assertion. First is completeness. Controls that ensure that the completeness assertion is being met include accounting for the numerical sequences the of purchase order. Receiving reports and vouchers are matching receiving reports with vendor invoice. If receiving report is matched with vendor invoice and voucher, the voucher is included in the voucher register. The auditor has high level of assurance as to the completeness of the assertion. Okay, next is accuracy. The amounts and other data related to recorded purchase and cash payment transaction have been recorded appropriately. I believe in this company, the Thai already record the transaction appropriately. So next is cut off. The purchase in Typhoid Manufacturing Berhad or the purchase transaction and cash payments have been forwarded to the account payable department monthly. Next is classification. So for the classification, the purchase and cash payments transaction have been recorded in the proper account, even though the receiving report is prepared in duplicate for the purchase requisition of inventory, but the goods have been returned to the vendor. Keeper prepares the goods return report in duplicate. The next is the audit procedures. First procedure is inspection of records or documents. So inspection of records or documents consists of examining internal or external records or documents that are in paper form, electronic form or other media. So for the Typhoid Manufacturing Berhad, do a regular checks on purchase and cash payments transaction that will avoid mismatch being happen. Next is inspection of tangible assets. So inspection of tangible assets consists of physical examination of the assets. Inspection is a relatively reliable type of evidence that involves the auditor inspecting or counting a tangible asset. For example, when observing an inventory count, the auditor of Typhoid Manufacturing Berhad may inspect individual inventory items to verify their existence and to prevent theft. Okay. Third, observation. Observation consists of looking at the process of procedure being performed by others. The actions being observed typically do not leave an audit trail and can be tested by examining records or documents. For an example, since all the purchase transactions are recorded manually, the auditor shall make his observation to evaluate the efficiency and effectiveness of the system followed by the organization to avoid potential mistake that may arise by recording manually. Okay, next, external confirmation. A confirmation represents audit evidence obtained by the auditor as a direct written response to the auditor from a third party that is a confirming party in a paper form or by electronic or other media. For instance, when Typhoid Manufacturing Berhad made a purchase, the presence of a receipt exists as a proof of the transaction. Scanning is the review of accounting data to identify significant or unusual items. This includes searching for large and unusual items in the accounting records as well as reviewing transaction data for indication of errors that have occurred. So the amount and in receipt and invoices should ensure are the same. This is to avoid any exceeding or less the amount the company receive or give to the customer. Next is reperformance. The reperformance, the independent execution uh, by the auditor of procedure or control that were urgently performed by the company personnel. The received duplicate report have to be adjusted. The goods need to be returned to the vendor. The storekeeper prepares the goods return report in duplicate. A copy is sent to the vendor and the duplicate copy is filed numerically. So I will pass to my friend Farah for the next explanation of the question.
Yes, Atika. Now we continue the presentation with the question number 1. Identify the major internal controls inherent in the present system. In self-control and assistant as of the operation of the company, serving as the first line of defense in the protection and prevention of asset and defending from misconduct and corruption, and all major responsible for the good internal control. Right. And the major control business is manually preparing and receive reports subject to more error. Okay, in this case, private manufacturing has spent all the year and have more than 100 active vendor accounts, but it continues to rely on manual systems to purchase for all the purchase transaction. So it will increase the risk of unauthorized access. So with computer application control, it may help the transaction to be properly authorized and will be more systematic. Okay, the next general ledger, and reconciliation of tax control account and list of account payable balance. So in this case, Berhad has divided different individuals according to specified duties such as storekeeper in purchase presentation, while the purchase order is prepared by the purchasing clerk quickly and then the vendor. So others that is not really quantity order and is indicated on invoice. So proceed to the next question is the next question is what is specific control for the CDM would you expect to find if tariff manufacturing Berhad is in a control structure over purchases and cash payment were effective? Okay. For the control over purchases, the goal is to make the report reflect obtain good service. So the first method is the division of the team overall responsibility for the direction is segregated from disbursement and account activity, and the second consider is authorization and approve the procedure and policy for ordering goods and services are in place. So next is the internal control procedure of the purchase payment. The goal is to ensure that all payments have been properly approved, registered, and made to the respective supplier. Here, payment is an important internal check before it is a payment proof that has been signed by an authorized staff supporting the document and supporting the document that needs to be reviewed. Okay. So the individual approves the transfer, signs transfer, and collect back and statement. Okay. Guys, so far as the Q and the Q&A